Okay, so I just watched my video, the last video I just made about the engine, and I wanted to clarify something about the about the new case, the new point type, where it's referencing a texture in a texture. So I'm actually not using RGBA as colors, but I am using those variables. So I'm throwing in R, G, B, and A to actually be what I've described here. So R is the number of textures in the X direction. So there's 64 textures in, let's see, project. So in the X direction, there's 64 textures. And then in the Y direction, there are 95. So 64 by 95. And if you multiply those together, you get the 6080. Okay. So So this is the number of textures in the X direction. This is the number of textures in the Y direction. This is the size of each texture as far as the X width in reference to the full length of the texture. So the X direction, like 2048, so if it's 32, because the Y is 32 also, but the reason why these numbers are different is because the Y32 is also in reference to the total Y on the texture, which is 3040. So this is actually 32 by 32, even though the numbers are different. And I just decided to make those what you would call normalized in relation to the texture size because I didn't want to do any more calculating in the fragment shader. And our type Y is the actual texture number that we want to display on the point, which in this case I just wanted a random number. And so as it goes from 0 to 6079, it displays the texture number. And then in the fragment shader itself, excuse me, when we're doing these calculations, so when I was describing this earlier, I wasn't completely describing how you get the x coordinate. But this is the x coordinate into the beginning, where you'll find the beginning of the so what you're looking for in the 32 by 32 picture in the texture is the 0, 0 coordinate. So this is the x0 and this is the y0, and that's the offset that you add. So you take GL point coordinate, you times it by this, which is b and a, okay, and b was the size of each texture, and A is the size of each texture. B is the X size width, and A is the Y size height. Okay, so what you're doing there is you're taking GL point chord as it goes from 0 to 1, and you're multiplying it by the total width and the total height. So as it goes from 0 to 1, you're going from 0 to the total width and 0 to the total height. So if you could follow that, you're mapping a small 32 by 32 point. And then you're adding a static offset of the x and y, which you're computing up here. So the y, the type y is, let's see, what was it? I should just bring this explanation up to there. I'm just going to bring that explanation up to the fragment shader because it's just going to make it easier, because even I don't remember, and I'm the one that made this. See, so R is the number of textures in the X direction. So you're taking the type Y, or wait, the actual texture number, right? Okay, so let's say the actual texture number is 1,000. So you're taking 1,000 divided by the number of textures in the X direction, and then the fractional result of that gives you where you will start your X coordinate. Okay, so you take the same calculation, only instead of taking the fractional, you take the nearest lower integer, and that will give you almost your y coordinate. You have to divide it by the number of textures in the y direction to get your y coordinate to where that'll be the beginning of the y within the texture. So that's how you get your X and your Y for right there. Excuse me, pardon me. I was about to sigh and open my mouth and let out a little burp there, so pardon me. So I hope that makes a little bit more sense. I'm trying to explain how this works. If you play around with this and you do some of the math on a texture that you're actually working with, I think it will make a little bit more sense to you. And another thing that would make more sense is if you look at this add point, because I throw in here the number of textures in the X direction, the number of textures in the Y direction, and again the 32 by 32 in normalized texture coordinates. And so if I wanted to change this to another texture, see, like I've actually done this previously. So if I wanted to change it to another texture, where am I at? So if I wanted to do this project 2, right? Okay. So then I would change things because it's 2048 by 1536, right? So a few things are going to change. So it's still going to be 64, but the question is how many down is it, right? So let me open PowerShell and I'll figure this out. 1536. 1536 divided by 32, so it's 48. Okay, so if I wanted to change to project 2, change this to 48. Okay, now this is probably going to be the same as far as X, but the Y is going to change because 32 is not the same to 1536. 32 divided by 1536. So now it's 0.0208. So right here you're going to change that 0208. So let's actually copy that, paste it. And then what was I thinking? Oh, I wanted to make a copy of what it was. Shoot. Now I gotta load the other one. Hold up. Hold up. Open with... Oh, let's just Control O, open that one. Where was I at? Add point? Alright, down here. Right, 6495 there. Just move it back into the commented out one. So I'm saving this. Okay, perfect. So now we got that. So then you can see the change we have to do. And then here, since now we know we have 64 by 48, so we have to go 64 by 48, 3072. Okay, so then when we reference into it, we can send it a random number, 3072. Okay. Now this won't work for this texture, so we need to go up here to project 2, load that texture, and now it's going to work. So that's kind of exciting. So you can see I'm throwing in an extra variable for the color, but I'm actually not using it for color. And I'm throwing in another variable for type because I'm actually using it for type. So, okay, so now we got 64, 48, we got that changed over. That's going to be the same, the size, the type. Okay, so let's see if that works, actually. And if it does work, yeah, so these are different textures now. This is from that other project 2, which is, okay, so that's really awesome. So now the next thing to do would be to add the second texture and then just make another type, and then I could load both textures in and then reference whatever I want. I would just have to have a separate type. And then what I would do, and this will probably be my next video, or in the future, I don't know if I want to use 2 videos or 2 textures just yet, but then I would be throwing in another uniform sampler for the next texture, and then we would have a different case for that. So instead of case 3, because the case 3 references this texture, we would use another case and reference the second texture, that or the 4th or 5th or however many textures I want to add. So that's cool. Okay, so anyways, I hope that clarification helps you. And if you look at the points move, when the points go out of bounds, when it finds that the point is out of bounds, so what it does is it resets these right here too. And the reason I did that was because what if previously it was a colored square, and the colored squares have random colors. so it wouldn't have this information there. So you have to make sure that this information is written to the vertex array. And the same with this. See, whereas here we don't even bother with it because we don't use it. Excuse me. And same with the number 5. We don't use that and all that fun stuff here. So when I'm doing the remake of the point primitive of the specific type, I just want to make sure that the data that's crucial to that particular point is updated, and I don't need to worry about the other stuff if it's not used. But in this case, when we're doing that particular type, all the data is critical. It uses all the points, and so that has to be completely redone. Anyways, I just have to see that run once again because it's just kind of, I don't know, something about watching these things fly by just so cool. And having the cursor be a random whatever, I don't even know what it's going to be. This is just cool. So stuff like this gets me excited. So, all right, thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe, tell your friends, and leave comments below the video. And I'm sorry this video ran into a little over 10 minutes too, but I hope the explanation was a little bit more verbose and explanatory and clarification, brought clarification to a bunch of people. All right, thanks again.